Hello and welcome to Data Driven, the podcast where we explore the emerging fields of data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. In this episode, Frank and Andy speak with Dan Burcaw. Dan is a serial entrepreneur who has founded 4 companies, each on the forefront of a major technology wave: open source software, the smartphone, cloud computing, and now machine learning. Currently, he leads Nam Eml, a company focused on helping app developers start and grow mobile subscription businesses. If you follow Frank and/or Andy on social media, you certainly have heard them bang on about their secret project. I will drop a one-word hint here: foreshadowing. Now on with the show.
Hello and welcome back to Data Driven, the podcast where we explore the emerging fields of data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. And if you like to think of data as the new oil, then you can consider us Car Talk, because we focus on where the rubber hits the road. So with that, as my guest on this pandemic road trip that hasn't happened, is by my co-pilot here is Andy Leonard. How you doing, Andy?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good, Frank. How are you?
I'm doing well. I had a kind of an architecture session this morning, so that went really well. It was an interesting conversation, and I love doing those. Those are always fun. How about you?
Yeah. So I'm proofing the next book. Proofing is the absolute last chance to remove all of the typos I've left in as I've gone through the last 3 full edit sessions. And there's still some there, Frank. I'm convinced that the next book's going to have a fair share of those. What I'm really concerned about is making sure that the demos work. And that's it's tedious, and it's the last pass. So it's like, is this over yet? And I'm sick and tired of reading this guy's writing, and it's me. So
Yeah,
yeah.
That was the hardest part. People ask me, like, when I wrote a book on Silverlight, and aside from it being about Silverlight, the hardest thing wasn't so much writing; it was having to go back and re-edit my own stuff, and and I would look at it and be like, man, like, I'm a terrible writer.
I have said over and over again to my computer monitor, who wrote this crap? But fortunately, this is a second edition, so it's one of those second editions where I kept the first 10 or 11 chapters. I changed from my writing language. I wrote it like 3 years ago. And this grew out of a series of blog posts that I wrote back in 2012. It was all in VB back then, Visual Basic. And so I wrote it that way in 2017. And for the second edition, I went back and updated all of that. That's really the only thing I changed, was I went to C#. And I kind of needed to, because the rest of the book was going to be in C# anyway. And so, yeah, that's kind of how it went. And for anybody listening that thinks, wow, Andy is smart, he's written a book about C#, he must know C# really, really well. I say throughout the book, I am not a C# developer. I feel like I'm working my way up to being a noob.
But don't you wear glasses?
I do wear glasses, yes.
So you can see sharp.
It took me a while. Do you have your sound effects running, Frank?
I do. We're back in Zencaster. So for folks listening, like, I don't remember this being on the live stream, because it's not. We're doing this the old-fashioned way.
Right.
And don't worry, Andy and I have been live streaming a lot, which you probably noticed. But today we have a very special guest, don't we, Andy?
Yeah. Dan Burcaw is awesome. He is a co-founder and CEO, and I hope I say this right. Is it Nam Eml, Dan?
Yeah, Nami, like tsunami.
Ooh. Okay. I got it right the first time. Nam Eml, and it's a really smart service for monetizing digital products with subscriptions. And he's had a whole ton of experience working in marketing for the Oracle Marketing Cloud, working with the mobile product for that. So pretty smart guy. Joined Oracle back during the acquisition of Push.io, and Push.io was a leading mobile messaging provider as well. And he served there as a co-founder and CEO. There's a bunch more in here about Dan, and it all kind of boils down to super smart, successful guy. We've had a little bit of banter before we click the record button. And I can attest to that. It's a really enjoyable conversation. I look forward to this show. Thanks for being here, Dan.
Really
Yeah, thanks
happy
for
to be
doing it.
here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So you're a serial entrepreneur and you founded a bunch of companies. But my favorite part of the bio I read on you was that you wrote software that ended up on a nuclear submarine.
Yeah, that's right. I
That
it's
that
hard.
blew me away. I was like, "What?"
It's hard to even tell that story sometimes because it's so unbelievable. I was 17 years old at the time.
Wow.
The company that I co-founded was building a flavor of Linux that was designed to run on Apple Macintosh hardware. And at the
Interesting.
time, the reason for that was that Apple was using the PowerPC chip. PowerPC chip in that moment of time, we're kind of talking the late 90s, early 2000s, had fantastic price per performance per watt, which is a metric that a lot of folks in the kind of high performance computing world look at when they're trying to figure out how to build these kind of supercomputer clusters. And so it just happened at that moment in time, the Mac had the best price per performance per watt because of the chips that they were using. And so we ended up doing a deal with Lockheed Martin and the U.S. Navy to build a cluster of Macs running Linux that were deployed across the U.S. Navy nuclear subfleet for the purpose of doing sonar image processing.
Wow.
And
Wow.
the software that I wrote was related to how folks on the boat would have to manage these units. If there was issues, how would they, the kind of the maintainability, repairability was a big issue when you're actually out at sea and trying to, have this stuff run in kind of a mission critical fashion. So we ended up, this was such a crazy project because the hardware was modified hardware. It wasn't off the shelf Apple hardware. It was Apple hardware. And then we did a bunch of things to it. And then it was Linux. And then it was some custom software that made the whole thing operate. And so it was a nutty project. And I'm looking back on it now, I'm surprised that it had ever shipped, quite frankly.
Spoken like a true engineer, right? You always look at your flaws and like, oh my God, that's actually running. So you where did you go after that? Because it says you're a serial entrepreneur, and so how did you get into? I don't want to steal kind of our pre-canned questions thunder, but tell me, how did you get into AI and ML? Or were you doing ML on those retrofitted Macs?
No, we weren't, but I think that part of that world of high performance computing, where a lot of our customers were, national labs or defense oriented things. I mean, part of the appeal of what we were offering in that period of time was that they were running algorithms and doing some of this stuff, obviously ahead of their time, and there wasn't the cloud computing yet, so they were literally just trying to assemble the biggest supercomputers using off the shelf hardware that they possibly could. So we weren't writing the algorithms; we were more enabling these algorithms to be run. But I would say the fast forward is that in terms of my career is that working on that led to being involved in sort of the mobile ecosystem from the launch of the App Store and the iPhone back in 2007, 2008. And in a way, it was very, very similar to what we did with the submarines because you were dealing with, constrained hardware. You always had to care about performance and battery life, and battery life less so on the subs, but some of the same sort of constraints where you're trying to get the best performance you can out of these things. And operating in that mobile landscape and building apps for some of the largest consumer brands, and then you guys mentioned in the intro about Push.io, this mobile messaging company that we built. We ended up at Oracle building this mobile marketing engine as part of the Oracle Marketing Cloud. And one of the things that we saw there is that, now fast forward to kind of more modern times, and there's such a prevalent use out there of technology like email, email marketing systems and push notifications in the world of mobile, in order to tackle kind of a fundamental problem that exists with some of these products, which is the user downloads your app, let's say, and they use it, and then they churn, and then they abandon. And you as a publisher of a product like this, is one of the battles that you're trying to fight is, how do I get them back into the experience?
Right.
And so our sort of observation as we were, had done our tenure there and we're looking to do something next and new, was a couple of things. The first thing we saw was that with the iPhone 10, I think it was, Apple released Face ID, and that was using algorithms running on the device. So the benefit was you could unlock the phone very, very fast, but also it had some privacy characteristics where Apple doesn't need your face and the kind of the point cloud representation of your face to be up on their server somewhere. So that was really intriguing to us. The other thing was that we saw that the app economy, so to speak, was in transition from kind of the early days of where it was paid downloads, transitioning to kind of in-app purchases, which the game ecosystem has really been focused on, to trying to create more durable, sustainable revenue models through subscription. And so how we sort of arrived at focusing a lot on data at NAMI is that it seemed to us like there was, if we really were excited about an idea that if we could help to give app publishers a mechanism to send way fewer push notifications and email messages, because they had a technology stack that could allow them to detect in the experience, right, directly on the device, that somebody was showing signs of churn, or that somebody was showing some early intent that they might be a candidate to be a subscriber. And so just that idea that maybe there's a way that we could be part of cutting down the messaging load by making the actual experiences smarter and more intelligent about what users are doing, was where we started.
That's interesting. What sorts of signals that you can collect, given, especially with Apple's kind of enhanced privacy policies that they've been doing, and what sorts of signals kind of indicate churn?
So, it's a great question. When we started out, we were thinking we're going to collect all this crazy stuff. I mean, we were even thinking at one point in the early prototyping that, maybe what carrier the user is on is some signal. Maybe the device form factor, whether it's the really expensive version of the phone or the lower, there was all these things that we were thinking about. But and we're not, my co-founder and I are not experts in this field. So one of the things that we did was we recruited our CTO, who has a PhD in applied math and had been building data science and ML models kind of in production in the real world applications of places like the Los Angeles Times and Tribune Publishing. And one of the first things he told us when he came in was, guys, like, wait, you don't need all these data points. A lot of what you're trying to collect just isn't going to move the needle. And so what it really gets to, both on so we look at, from subscriptions, we're looking at kind of two things. One is, what are signals that show that somebody might have a propensity to purchase? And then secondarily, that early churn detection, or kind of likelihood to churn. And it turns out it's pretty simple on some level, because it's really about the behavioral signals around engagement.
Interesting.
So are they using the app? Are they using the app a lot? Did they used to use it a lot and now they're not using it as much? So those are kind of the key signals.
So you're not popping up little boxes and saying, "Do you want to keep using the app? Check yes or no."
No, I mean it's funny. I have a friend that has a company that powers some of that the around the ratings, right? Do you want to
Yeah,
rate this
yeah,
app? And they have a really fascinating take on it, which is that because whenever I see one of those, I hit no. I don't. I just like want to dismiss it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
he's got a strong viewpoint that by asking a user a binary question, it provides them better data for what they're trying to do around kind of customer sentiment. And
Interesting.
and so I just thought I was fascinated by that because whenever I see one of those ratings pop ups, I just want to I want to say no, even if I like the experience on some level. I have this visceral reaction that's just like, leave me alone.
Well, I
Right,
wonder
right.
if
Well, and it's always when you're sorry, Andy.
that's okay. Go ahead.
It's always when you're trying to do something or the kids are screaming, like, "Do you want to rate this?" Like, no, I want to use this stupid app. Like, even if I like it. But what I find myself doing, and as I'll say, not now, like, remind me later because I'm like, it's a good app. I do want to review it, but
Right.
I never get to it. Sorry, Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, that's okay. My question was similar. It was, what does that indicate? Because I do what you do, and what both of you've said you do. I most of the time click no or later. So, what is the indication of that? Does that mean somebody is happy with the app and they want to get back to it?
Well, I think for at least that ratings use case, what they're really trying to do is, kind of build buckets of users where you want to know if a user is if somebody says no to that prompt. Well, you might want to provide a mechanism for them to leave some comments or some feedback or target them with some messaging such that you can understand what they're not happy with versus
Okay.
with the rationale being let's try to keep a bad review off the app store. Let's try to
Yeah.
get the data, create a customer feedback loop that we can have a dialogue with the customer rather than kind of this blind review that we don't really have a way to kind of address other than aggregate trends.
Yeah.
So that's
Interesting.
part of what they're trying to do. And then people that say, "Yeah, I love it," push them over to leave a review because it's probably going to be a good one. And
Mm.
unfortunately, in these app ecosystems, reviews and ratings do have a real, maybe I say unfortunately, and I'm not sure if it's unfortunate really, but these reviews have a bearing on searchability and whether somebody's going to discover your app.
Right.
So that's why it matters.
No, that's very true. And plus, I also wonder, in terms of churn or usage, I mean, there's so many experiences, and I think there's some apps that just notify you all the time. And eventually, I'll either uninstall the app or just turn off notifications from it. Do you have that data too? Like, how many, can you see when the user's turned off notifications?
I mean, sure, we could have that data.
Hmm.
We don't.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
that's not part of our set of signals. So what we're really trying to drive is what we're trying to build really is a. So I was at Oracle. I was building the mobile part of the Oracle Marketing Cloud, and in a lot of the Oracle Marketing Cloud is about giving folks that do a lot of commerce or e-commerce, this kind of powerful platform where you can message the user kind of in the right channel, so SMS, display ads, email, push, kind of based upon things like, hey, maybe they put something in their shopping cart and they didn't complete the transaction, and you want them to not abandon that cart. You want them to complete the cart. But that's a commerce use case. What we've identified is that in this move to subscriptions and kind of digital subscriptions, there's not really a marketing system out there that helps folks manage um, how they communicate with their users, their subscribers, their former subscribers, et cetera. Because a subscription's a life cycle. It's not
Right.
just a purchase in a moment in time. And so you have to message way more intelligently and be informed by that context of the life cycle. So, for example, if somebody has subscribed, maybe they've had a couple of renewals, and now they've turned off auto renew. Well, that is a signal for sure that, and I don't need a fancy algorithm to know that that means that this user is showing some indication that they are probably going to churn out of the subscription. Maybe
Right.
they're not going to churn out of the entire experience if it has a freemium piece. But here's the thing: is that in that window when they turn off auto renew to when the next renewal is, it's not minutes. It's probably days or weeks, depending, or maybe even months, depending on the billing frequency of the original subscription. And so you got an opportunity in that window to remind users about the value of the product.
Right.
And it's okay that some users cancel, right? Because the thing about the subscription economy is that it's trying to find folks that are a great match for the product that you're offering versus so subscriptions aren't a scam. If you do it right, it's meant for you to find your best customers. Not everybody is a good candidate for every app subscription. And that's
Yeah.
totally okay. And so rather than marketing to this kind of massive audience, what you're really trying to do is find users who are a great fit and really can become fans and advocates of your brand.
Well, doesn't that
Interesting.
start by mass marketing?
Yeah. I mean, you're right in the sense that, and that's why the ratings matter and
Yeah.
the whole acquisition. I mean, you got to find the funnel.
Yeah.
But what's actually interesting is that, there in the mobile ecosystem, there's a lot of effort spent around acquiring installs, and you pay these cost per install campaigns where you guys may have seen it on some of the social networks where it's an ad for an app, and if you click through to the app to the ad, it'll take you to one of the stores, and then you install that app. And so what happens though is that a lot of marketers are measuring, am I getting a good CPI? Am I getting a good cost per install rate? Right? Am I spending as little money as I can to get that install?
Right.
And that's for that long tail, or that kind of the wide part of the funnel on acquisition.
Right.
But what isn't happening as much, in part because there's been gaps in the data, and this is one of the things that we're trying to help with, is that it may actually be that the user that's the least expensive to acquire the install isn't actually the type of user that has the best lifetime value from a subscription
Right.
perspective. You might be willing to pay more for an install if it's more if it's a better match to your business objective. So that's some of what's happening out there, and some of the old school, or I say old school, it's really not, but how one thinks about acquisition in kind of the broader mobile ecosystem, I think needs to be looked at differently if you're trying to offer a subscription revenue stream.
Well, I hear you. And I'm there actually. One of the businesses that I run is products that are subscribed to, and collecting data, even getting data to start with when you're starting blind, is incredibly challenging, because one of the things we were looking for is, what do we got to do to to get somebody to buy this? And I know that sounds silly, but this is not a trivial subscription amount. And it's a product that has huge ROI, but getting somebody to plop down hundreds or thousands of dollars for a subscription based on monthly or yearly is still quite a bit of friction to overcome. So I get exactly what you're saying. You kind of you jumped over it, but you said something really important a while ago. You said subscriptions aren't a scam, and I think some of the market sees that, sees it that way. It's this. It's different when you're charging someone 99 cents and when you're charging them $99 or $999.
Yeah, and to be clear, there are scammy subscriptions out there. It's not to say
Yeah,
those
yeah.
don't exist. It's just that if you actually want to build a durable, we focus on the durability of the subscription business. If you want to build a real subscription business that has longevity and has a really nice growing subscriber base, then that can't be a scam.
Right. And the word we use internally is, I like durable. We use sustainable. So I absolutely love that. It's very encouraging to hear you say that, Dan. So thanks for that.
I also think that it's not just software that's going into subscription model. And I was very skeptical of the subscription model myself. I thought it was a scam. I was like, oh, okay. So instead of buying like one shrink wrap box every like so many years, now I have to pay somebody every month. One thing that turned my opinion around on the whole notion of it being a scam, not that they're, you know what I mean, it is Adobe, right? Like at one point to get everything in the Adobe product suite, I mean, it was $13,000. And I just wasn't going to spend that much money to get all that. But when they switch to Creative Cloud and it's, $25 or $50 a month, that is far more palatable. And I also think from my point of view, that's far more palatable and predictable. But also from the company side, it's less money per customer per month, but it is a per month as opposed to, every 18 or 24 months, they would get a, $13,000 from somebody to buy that box, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's an interesting thing. And now we're starting to see the subscription model kind of come to content. Disney Plus, D Plus, Peacock. I mean, every media company starting to do their own streaming model. So I think your timing is really good to kind of, analyze and kind of understand this, because I think the subscription model is here to stay.
Yeah, and I think how we think about the categories is that it really could be anything. I just saw yesterday with the Tesla earnings report that they were talking about offering their full self-driving. I know that I'll put the asterisks behind that marketing label, but that currently that's a multi-$1,000 add-on, and now they're going to offer it as a subscription, so more people can access that. And I think that's exactly what you're saying with the Creative Suite. The Creative Cloud example is that, at the shrink box price points, they were just not going to be able to reach all the people that have a creative fiber that would have been able to do something amazing with that software had they had it.
Right.
The other thing is we talk about this a little bit as like the plusification, right? Everybody's calling this Disney Plus or whatever plus. The plusification of everything. And so you could imagine even in an industry like heavy equipment, what's the subscription service for the John Deere tractor?
Right.
Is it actually accessing the tractor? Is it a subscription where you it's almost like a lease, or is it a add-on service where you can leverage that piece of physical plant and equipment using through more bells and whistles, more capabilities that are unlocked through software?
That is a very interesting use case. And since I live in Farmville, Virginia, not the game, I have to say that every time. Never played the game, but I've had people read my feeds and go, you play that game all the time. I'm going out to water the chickens or work in the garden or the greenhouse. I've never played that game. So
but he's actually doing it. Like, that's the funny thing.
yeah, for real. Yeah, for real. What you could do though with a John Deere subscription is you could access the tools. Like maybe you need a tillage tool or a disc, because you only need those, a few weeks a year. And rather than go out and pay $10,000 for this, super disc that'll, really cut down the amount of passes you have to make and, just do everything well, rather than just pay for that outright. Let's say it's, I don't know, $15,000. You can just subscribe for $150 a month and go get it when you need it. If anyone from John Deere's listening, you can cut me in for actually, you should cut Dan in for a percentage of that. He's the one who's brought it up. But, it is a lot of that service, service at scale, for subscriptions. I know Frank works at the Microsoft Technology Center, and he helps a lot of customers think how they can apply Azure to their business model. And that's one of the nicest things about having that technology scaling is you can go move the slider. The classic example is the income tax business. And when you need it, you just go move the slider all the way up. And then when you're done, you move it all the way back down.
Right. Did we lose Dan, or is he
Oh,
just
I'm
really
here.
quiet?
No,
Okay,
I'm
good. 'Cause
here.
we're
I'm just thinking. I'm just thinking about the farm, and excited about. I mean, that's the thing that's exciting is that where does this all go? And it's not just about packaging something as a subscription, but back to the creative example, Creative
Yeah.
Cloud example.
Yeah.
How much more amazing content has been created by creators because of accessibility to the tools. And so take that to farming, take that to any of these other categories where, hey, maybe I need a crane to do something, but to rent a crane's expensive, right? So it's just interesting how it might make things that have traditionally been incredibly specialized and expensive more accessible.
No, that's true, and I think it's a win-win for everybody because it's more accessible. You also have a shorter feedback loop to get paid for the company. So I think it's not that typical, and software has been kind of moving towards this anyway. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
the continuous delivery or continuous integration, that sort of thing, is just something that I don't know if the chicken or the egg came first, but I mean, certainly, if you were only deploying something once a year or every 18 months, certainly you don't have to have processes in place if you're deploying something every 18 days. It's a different scale. And I think it's interesting to see, you're right, that these tools are becoming more and more accessible with that. That's interesting. It's interesting. The farm example is interesting because I know there's a lot of controversy about right to repair, particularly bringing John Deere, I think, is somewhere in that. So I wonder how that will shake out. Do you think
Yeah.
that's even tangential, or is it just kind of, Frank had too much coffee today?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. That's definitely above my pay grade and outside of my industry sector expertise. But it's if you have to even ask, or if that's a question that comes up, it's sort of like the robo taxi use case where you hear people talk about, well, who takes the liability if the robo taxi runs somebody over? Is it Tesla? Is it the person that owns the Tesla? Is it the Uber service that operates the network? And you know what? I think it's just all going to get figured out, and it'll take some time, and there will be, like everything, the right guardrails probably won't be there on day one, but then there'll be, unfortunately, an incident or something, and then it'll get sorted out. Although I think in that particular case, people are being a little more proactive, thinking about some of these doom scenarios.
Well, when it's life and death, that makes perfect sense. Just circling back, Dan, a little bit to I like Frank. I absolutely love. You've said it twice now about how many things have been created using the Adobe suite because a whole different group of people got access to that technology. I think too about Adobe. How I wonder how the economics worked out for them. I wonder if they grew enough to overcome the $13,000 price point every so many years or months, Frank. I wonder how that total amount of income compares to the amount of income that's trickling in by comparison, each month at $25 or $50 a month.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, that's how data driven is produced. Anything you see me do on, video wise on social media, I mean, that's I have Premiere, I have the whole suite.
Hmm.
This is edited in Audition and filtered through Audition, and honestly, like, I wasn't going to drop $13,000 for. I think
Right.
you're right. I think it did open up a whole market for them, and Adobe's doing a lot of interesting things. I don't want to go on a rabbit hole on that, but if anyone from Adobe's listening and you'd love to come on the show, we can talk about it. But Yeah, no, I think it's a fascinating shift, and I think you're right. I think companies were skeptical, and I think that consumers were skeptical. You know, I mean, Microsoft's, I think when Microsoft and Adobe shift that, I think the consumers kind of, and generally IT departments in general, kind of made that shift too, because, you don't have to buy Office every so often, however much that would cost for an enterprise. You just subscribe per month per user. So you
Yeah.
can scale up and scale down your costs. I think that, obviously I work for Microsoft and, they pay my mortgage and all that. But I mean, I think that's a great example, because think about how ubiquitous Office is. And I guess I do have access to the financials, but if you look at Microsoft stock, I mean, it's done pretty well, probably in no small part to the fact that it is subscription based, and you don't have to buy and stand up a server. You just kind of, it's everything as a service. You know what I mean? Like even in small businesses, they can get, if they pay X amount per month, they'll have the same access that large enterprises do. With the telephony and all the bells and whistles you get on Office.
Also, the mindset of scale down is really important, because it's okay if somebody needs to, go to fewer seats, or in the case of consumer software, okay, if somebody churns out of the subscription. So here's an interesting feature. So the Google ecosystem, Google Play, they have a mechanism where if you try to cancel a subscription in one of your apps, they give you an opportunity to pause the subscription, which I think is very fascinating. And that's just another signal, right? Because sometimes people want to cancel because they want to shift the dollars somewhere else, or they want to, they want to save some money this month.
Right.
But that doesn't mean they don't like the product. It just means they're trying to reallocate resources. So
Right.
pause is interesting because it gives the publisher a signal that, hey, this user is not upset with the experience. They just need
Right.
to take a break.
Interesting.
Very
I
interesting.
like that.
Very, very cool. Well, Dan, we have a list of questions that we usually ask guests around this time in the show. And the very first question is, how did you find your way into data? And kind of as a clarification of that, did data find you, or did you find data?
Well, it it probably found me in the sense that the eye-opening experience working inside the Oracle Marketing Cloud was kind of seeing the ad tech part of the world, and how companies are trying to stitch together data across all these disparate sources in order to have a more fulsome understanding of the user they're trying to market to.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty eye opening, because we've all had the experience where the banner ad kind of follows you throughout the internet, but to kind of understand why that's happening
Right.
is really, really interesting, and it quite frankly informed why. With NAMI, we're trying to use things like the on-device machine learning capabilities, and focus our collection and try to minimize things like PII and other kind of more personal information, and yet still drive some of these ML based solutions, because we didn't want to necessarily build something that was just another part of this very privacy unfriendly part of the ecosystem.
Right.
Interesting. And the privacy and the PII and the management of that is a moving target, isn't it? With all the
Yeah, it sure.
legislation and such.
Oh yeah, sure is, and some of, especially I don't say especially, but in the mobile space, there's been analytics tools and all these other solutions for years now that have taken approach of basically vacuum up everything, and
Right.
it's going to be much harder for those guys to stay compliant with ever changing regulation when that's how they've architected their whole system. We've architected to try to be more of a data minimalist. Now it means there's some engineering challenges, right? We make our lives a little bit harder, but we just think that it's if it gives us more it gives us a better position to be in relative to regulation. But more importantly, we're trying to think about this as end users ourselves, and try to strike a little bit of a more mindful thread about, well, what data am I willing to give up to get something in return, instead of just assuming that users are going to be fine giving everything up, but they're not.
Right. A consent-driven model, I think you're right, has a future. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say. So that, I guess, data kind of found me, but here we are.
So, second question: what's your favorite part of your current gig?
Yeah. There's two answers to that. I mean, one is that I've got such a great team, and nurturing the team and recruiting new people, and that part of it, just as the non-technical side, is really great. And it's especially so because while we're working on, we're not trying to cure cancer, and so what it means is that we have to figure out how to talk about what we're doing in a way that people get excited about. And what I found is that some of the topics around privacy, some of the topics around trying to engineer at scale, and some of the things that we're doing, it's just a really attractive recruiting opportunity for us. And it's just the team that we've been able to put together is just, I can't say anything. It blows me away. The second part, though, is that we're kind of creating a category, this subscription marketing system that we're building. It's kind of a new thing, and so that's exciting, both because we're kind of plowing our own frontier, but we're trying to do that informed by all these lessons from companies that we've been involved in the past. So be it, there's still examples going all the way back to that shrink wrap software containing Linux for Mac that got deployed onto a submarine, that still inform how I think about things, or things I did at Push.io, and then things inside of Oracle. And so, doing something new, but being informed by the lessons of the past is the other part that's really exciting for us. And, oh, by the way, we're doing things in some cases with on-device ML that really feels like it's at the state of the art. And maybe we end up placing some wrong bets on some of this stuff, but it's still rewarding to try, even if we're not sure where it's all going to lead to.
It makes perfect sense. And I love your emphasis on the shift from, collecting data at the server end of the pipe versus collecting it at the point of contact on the phone or device itself. That's got to be game changing.
Yeah, I think there's going to be whole categories of companies that, web analytics or mobile analytics or some of these other parts of the marketing or advertising tech stacks that change to that edge-based approach. Whole new companies, they're kind of the next generation of these categories. So while we're trying to do something kind of new, I think there's existing categories that are going to see some disruption, driven by privacy. And think about how powerful these devices are. There's no reason they can't be taking some of the burden. So as much as we can scale up our Azure as much as we want, there also can be a balance where if I can do more on the device, then I can focus my Azure or my other cloud infrastructure on the things that really need to be at the cloud scale.
Right. No, it makes perfect sense. It really does. So we have 3 complete this sentence questions next. And so the first is, when I'm not working, I enjoy blank.
Well, normally I would answer that question with one of my hobbies, which is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. However, I am currently on Jiu-Jitsu hiatus, in part because of the pandemic.
Sure.
It's obviously a high contact sport, but also because I've got a kiddo on the way, so I'm trying to limit my exposure to kind of anything outside of my house.
Right.
But it's one of the things I like to do, and it's totally different from technology, but it's incredibly, while it's a physical sport, it also activates a different part of my brain and kind of creativity. So it's so great.
Well,
Well, first off,
congratulations.
congratulations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, thanks. Yeah,
Yeah. It's
this
awesome.
is this will be
Fatherhood is the ultimate trip.
this will be number one. So
Oh, wow.
we're nervous but excited.
Oh, that's awesome. Congrats. It's
Yeah.
it's an adventure that never ends. um so next fill in the blank question is complete this sentence. I think the coolest thing in technology today is blank.
I just think how it surprises us and how it's applied. I mean, just this week, seeing how, Reddit meets Robinhood meets destroy a hedge fund. That wouldn't have been on my bingo card. And I'm not necessarily saying that I'm advocating manipulating the market that way, but it's just like we're constantly surprised by technology, and that's what makes it so delightful and to work in this field and just see new things that seem so obvious once you experience them, but they weren't obvious until somebody came up with it and put the love and energy into bringing it to the universe.
No, that's a good point. I think if there was a movie about kind of what's happening with GameStop and Reddit and the hedge funds, it would have been branded as ridiculous. But here we are.
Here we are. The other thing was this week, back to Tesla, the new Model S refresh that they did. It has this kind of crazy looking steering wheel, and I just read an article about, because they got rid of all the little stocks, so like the turn signal stock and all of that's gone. And so the question was, well, how do you go into reverse, or how do you go into drive? And I saw an article that explained it, and they're trying to use their autopilot cameras to know that, hey, if you're in front of your garage, well, drive isn't a valid choice. So you must intend to go in reverse. And that blows me away. I mean, we'll see how that works in the real world. But again, it's like, that is just some cool technology. It'll be one of those interesting things, like in a few years, does the stock come back because that was maybe a bet that they made too early, or did they get it right?
Yeah.
Or will there be an aftermarket for people to install them?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Bring your own stock.
Right.
That's right. Yeah. If you want to go all Dukes of Hazzard, then what? I mean,
you have to weld the door shut, right?
I guess. Wow. So our next and final complete this sentence. I look forward to the day when I can use technology to blank.
I think one of the most annoying things about the internet is recipes. I know that sounds crazy, but I saw something the other day that said like food and beverage related websites get like 27% more traffic, search traffic than the next top category.
Wow.
And we cook a lot. We love to cook and try new things, and it just feels like it's a constant struggle. And these experiences are, because they're all very like ad driven. You can never actually like see the recipe or the directions. They're always getting covered in a banner ad, and so it sounds like something simple, but it's like, I just want a wonderful experience that can help me explore the world of cooking and kind of know what I like, but also that helps encourage me to try some new things. But that's a delicate balance, because you don't want it to take you kind of 180 degrees in the opposite direction, or maybe you do, but sometimes you just want to be like, oh, well, this pattern exists. You tend to like to use, rices and pastas. Well, what if you introduced, into a recipe that you're already like to make? Why don't you try to introduce quinoa, or and just like kind of a food navigator, both in terms of ingredients and flavors, but also in terms of skills, because I'm not a professional by any stretch of the imagination. I'm basically not even an amateur chef, it feels like, with some of the stuff coming out of our kitchen. But I'd like to get better, and I'd like some help doing it.
So it's funny you mentioned that.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Frank. No, go. Okay.
No, because my wife cooks really well. She's really good at it, and I'm like a noob. Like boiling water, I would have to like look it up online to figure out what to do. But so one of the things that I got for Christmas last year was a larger Echo Show, which is an Amazon Alexa device. And as soon as I say her name, she's probably going to perk up and start chiming in. But there's a Food Network or Food Kitchen to Go or something like that it's called. And there's this whole recipe making thing that it has. So if you go through it, it doesn't quite do what you said with the recommendations, although I would imagine that with all the smart people at Amazon, I'm sure that that's coming. But what's cool about it is you can see a video of it being made, and you can go through the recipe, and the screen stays up, doesn't like go into the dark mode, which is a problem on my iPad. I think it's well designed. Is it perfect? No. Do I need to do a lot to learn how to cook? Oh yeah. But I think it's a step in the right direction, and particularly, I don't know. I just think it's fascinating that you can, and when you're cooking, your hands are usually busy and they're messy. I think the voice UI aspect of the Alexa devices, I think, lends itself to a significant advantage there. So I don't know. I think it's cool, but I'm a nerd, so. And it was an excuse for me to get a better Amazon Echo. So
there you go. I was going to share that I'm a professional eater, I think. Not so much, but I enjoy preparing foods. And Frank and I both experiment with diets, and both our wives are really good cooks. So that works out well for me being a professional eater, I think. I'll jump in here, Frank, with our sixth question. I share something, Dan, about yourself, but we remind you something interesting or different about yourself. But we remind you it's a family podcast. So
something different from being a 17-year-old writing code for nuclear submarines.
Well, that's a powerful story. So
yeah, that's hard to beat.
It's going to be
hard
to
skip
top
this
that
one. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe we've already covered this.
That is hard to beat. I mean, that's like one for the books right there.
I don't know if I can beat it. I mean,
no, that's hard to beat.
Anything else is just going to be weak.
Yeah.
Well, the Brazilian jiu-jitsu, that was interesting.
That was cool.
I've never heard of Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
So have you seen sort of like, have you ever come across a UFC fight?
Yes.
So, UFC Ultimate Fighting Championship, but it's kind of generally mixed martial arts. And so you'll see folks that are like boxers and, folks that have other martial arts background. But a lot of those, the people that win have experience with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And, the whole kind of basis for it is it came out of Brazil and, kind of from the streets, so to speak, although actually it's got origin in lineage back to judo out of Japan, jiu-jitsu and judo out of Japan, but it's really about close contact. So, whereas you're standing up and swinging at somebody that's a jiu-jitsu practitioner, their objective is to try to get the fight to the ground and then figure out how to obtain and maintain a dominant position. So that's either, being on top of somebody or sweeping them so that you're in control. And it's sort of like a three-dimensional chess game in a way, because based upon, so you get the fight to the ground, and in jiu-jitsu training, we grapple. And so there's rules around, you're not allowed to break somebody's arm, obviously.
Right.
Or manipulate their fingers or, poke them in the eyes. But you're able to do certain things to try to get them into a submission hold where they'll then tap, and that means you reset and, go back to neutral and then figure out who can get back to that dominant position. And so it ends up being this sort of wild game of based upon what somebody else is doing, how you respond. And the folks that are black belts that have been doing this for, more than 10 years in a lot of cases,
Wow.
their menu of options of how to respond and based upon the other person is like this very large list. And I'm only a blue belt, so my list of options is short. So if I've done, the 3 things I know how to do to cope with a certain situation, and then they know how to react to that, and now I don't have the 4th item in my toolbox, well, then I guess I'm about to get tapped out.
So I'm making a note here. You can hear me writing, and it's don't mess with Dan.
Or if you do, make sure you're a black belt or a brown belt or a purple belt, or probably even most other blue belts.
So question 7 is, where can people find out more about you and what you're doing?
Well, the company Nam Eml, our website is www.namiml.com. So that's the company. I'm on all the socials. My last name is Burcaw, Burcaw. So if you want to follow my crazy journey, any of the normal places, you'll find me.
Awesome.
Very cool. Well, Dan, one last thing. Audible is a sponsor, and listeners can go to thedatadrivenbook.com. And if you do that, you get a free Audible book. And we get a little bit of a kickback if you subscribe. So it helps keep the show going. It helps us explain to our wives what we're doing, up here talking to ourselves. Or Frank's in the basement, I'm upstairs. So up here, down there, talking to ourselves. Can you recommend a good book that someone might listen to?
Do I get 2? Can I recommend 2?
Oh, absolutely.
As many as you want, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I've got a data one. So that'll be the one that I do first. So this book's from a few years ago, but I think it's totally relevant to folks that are working in this world. It's called The Weapons of Math Destruction.
Ooh, cool name.
By Kathy O'Neill. And the subtitle is How Big Data Increases Inequality and Threatens Democracy.
Wow. Okay.
And she really gets into, making sure that you're thinking about the data biases and different things as you're building these algorithms. So That's a great one. And then from the Wayback Machine, the first book that I read as I was geeking out as a junior high school kid that was fascinated by computers is a book called The Cuckoo's Egg. And it's this old school, real kind of based on a true story about computer espionage in kind of the early internet, really back to BBSs.
Wow.
And it's just a fun read for those, either for people that have been around a while, and it'll give you some nice sentimental about the old days, or if you're just getting started in computing, it's a fun story about where all this started.
Interesting.
Very cool.
And that's
awesome.
Clifford Stoll.
Clifford Stoll. Yeah, he's a character. Cliff Stoll. He used to be, when I first saw him, he was on a PBS documentary about how he caught, I think, Kevin Mitnick, I want to say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, he also had a regular segment on a TV show that used to be on, I forget the channel, but it was called The Site. It had Soledad O'Brien and, oh my God, I can't believe I'm blanking on his name. Leo Laporte.
Oh, that was like a CNET or was that
CNET or like CNBC? Yeah, and that was the first show that was like on a mainstream cable that was about kind of technology and the web and the internet. That show always blew me away. But Cliff had like a kind of they gave him kind of free rant to talk about a topic for 5 minutes, and it was always entertaining. Awesome. So with that, I want to say thank you, Dan, for your time. Thanks for joining us here at Data Driven, and go check out his site and go check out what he's doing, because I think the subscription model is here to stay, and I think you're going to find it in a lot more places. And if you're listening to this at some point in the future, yes, that might have been foreshadowing. So with that, I will let the nice British lady end the show.
Thanks for listening to Data Driven. We know you're busy and we appreciate you listening to our podcast. But we have a favor to ask. Please rate and review our podcast on iTunes, Amazon Music, Stitcher, or wherever you subscribe to us. You have subscribed to us, haven't you? Having high ratings and reviews helps us improve the quality of our show and rank us more favorably with the search algorithms. That means more people listen to us, spreading the joy. And, can't the world use a little more joy these days? Now, go do your part to make the world just a little better, and be sure to rate and review the show.